Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Multifamily Pros. It's a series produced by Updater where we talk to brilliant people in the multifamily industry and learn how they went from status quo to status pro. And I'm pretty impressed with our team that our first guests on our very first episode are one of my personal favorite companies, Bozzuto. Thank you so much for being here, Jenna Miller. Jenna Miller is the Director of Customer Experience, and Daniel is the VP of Digital Marketing. Is that correct?
That's
yes.
Right.
Amazing. Fun fact, I saw Kelly from Bozzuto speak at AIM years ago, which we all just came from. And I have been fangirling over this brand ever since. I think you won an award and I watched a commercial of some hilarious thing that you did for your residents. And no one in the industry does it like Bozzuto. And I feel like we're in on some special secret meeting right now because we're actually going to pull back the curtain and dig into what are you doing that is so different? How do you approach all of this, the resident journey, your brand, customer experience so differently that makes you stand out from everyone? So very excited to get into this. Just to get started, Jenna, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role with Bozzuto and yourself?
Yeah, so my official title is Senior Director of Marketing and Customer Experience. And I've been with Bozzuto, I'm coming up on 12 years, which is crazy to say. And I spent the first half of my career at Bozzuto leading marketing strategy and lead gen strategy for portfolios of like 30, 40 properties across all of our different regions. And then 4 or 5 years ago, transitioned into the CX role, which has been really exciting because kind of paving the path along with Bozzuto and kind of our discipline in CX. I would say kind of at like the simplest level, I love problem solving. So like that's what my job is. And so I spend a lot of time leading our research and consumer insights initiatives and kind of using that data to identify where there's opportunities in our customer experience, and then propose solutions. And so with that comes a lot of trying new technologies and piloting and implementing new things that are not only going to enhance the experience for our customers, but also hopefully make our teams more efficient. That's what I would consider a win. And then personally, I'm a mom. So I have an almost 7-year-old and almost 4-year-old twins, 2 dogs, and a husband who loves to fish on the Chesapeake Bay where we live.
Oh, that's wonderful. I have noticed over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, so many more customer experience titles coming into this industry. I don't think I remembered seeing that quite as much previously. And I think it's really a sentiment to how passionate we are as an industry about really creating an amazing experience for our customer. I mean, you're not selling them a cup of coffee. This is high stakes. It couldn't be more high stakes than your home. And so it's such a delicate and important relationship that you guys just take so much care to nurture, which is very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. I hope you get to eat lots of delicious fish all the time.
Me too.
Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with Bozzuto.
Well, some of you might have noticed a technical surprise that I just had in the background. All of a sudden, the TV turns on and there's cartoons. My daughter is somewhere in the house watching her iPad, and she must have airplayed it to the TV. So I had to go and bribe her and ask her to not do that anymore. So I'm glad that Jenna had a long intro. So yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Paulino. I'm the VP of Digital Marketing at Bozzuto. And I'm relatively new in the industry. I've been with Bozzuto. Bozzuto is my first role in the industry. And so I always say I'm very lucky because I did not know the company I was stepping into. This opportunity kind of came across my view randomly on LinkedIn. And I'd heard about it before, but I wasn't really familiar with the industry or with Bozzuto really, not entirely. So I lived in the area where Bozzuto's based. So I had seen the logo, but I never lived at a property, and I just really wasn't totally familiar with, the wonderful reputation that Bozzuto has. So I feel very fortunate now that I've been in the industry and really understand how Bozzuto is regarded. I'm really lucky to have landed here as my first role. My background is in marketing, so I worked in various industries. I started my career in wealth management with Wells Fargo, and then I went on to grad school. I did an MBA in marketing and finance, and after that, I landed at Procter & Gamble, which is kind of a dream destination for many marketers. I was there for a few years. I worked in the makeup business, which was interesting for me, something I didn't really know much about, but I worked at CoverGirl for several years. And then most recently, right before Bozzuto, I was in the publishing business. So always in marketing. So I consider myself a marketer first, and I've really enjoyed this industry, been learning a lot, especially from my colleagues and those that I meet at conferences. So I think I bring a little bit of a diverse background in that it's multiple industries, and but really, really have been enjoying my time for the last 3 years.
Amazing. We have, as an industry, take so much inspiration from those other major consumer brands. I mean, what those brands do with user-generated content, social media, and influencer marketing, and just the way they go to market with their products is so robust. It's very, I know we've spoken about that at a lot of different conferences as a community, what we can learn from outside the industry. So I love that Bozzuto brought someone in with all of that experience. It is great having diversity. A lot of us are lifers and have just been in this since the beginning. And so it's nice to have a good mix. So this is a great mix for this webinar. Thank you both for being here. Shall we dive into the questions?
Let's do it.
So I spoke to you both a couple months ago, actually just Jenna, and one of my colleagues told me that you guys were totally reinventing the wheel this year. And I wrote about this in our introduction to this event, but the Netflix co-founder said something about, like, if you don't disrupt your own business, someone else will. And there's a reason why Bozzuto continues to be on the forefront in the industry, is because you're not getting comfortable. It sounds like we're taking some big steps this year to really rethink the entire customer experience from start to finish. So I'd love to hear about how Bozzuto generally approaches the resident journey differently.
Yeah, so I'll take the first stab at that, Sydney. And in regards to continually refining our approach, it's something, we're all passionate about what we do. So I know myself and my team and many others that work around us, we wake up every day with just a relentless pursuit of how can we continue to innovate, and how can we continue to reinvent our approach and take those best practices from other industries. So it's something that, we find a natural passion for, and that's what makes it so interesting, because when you find that fit, it's something that just kind of comes out of you and you don't feel like you have to force it. So from my perspective, in regards to how do we approach the resident experience and the resident journey, I would say that, historically, this industry is an industry that is so focused on that physical experience when you step into those buildings, right? It's a physical experience. It's also an experience that's highly emotional, right? We provide sanctuary for people. It's their home. So it's something that's extremely important. And so a lot of the focus goes there, right? But in my role and my team, we're focused on digital marketing. And from my perspective, what I always think about is that we're the curb appeal, right? So a property can be fantastic. A hotel could be amazing. A restaurant could have amazing reviews and a great reputation. Or even a home that you're interested in could be fantastic, but the curb appeal really matters, right? That's what determines whether some people will continue on that journey, whether they'll walk into your building or they'll continue to drive by. So for us, the digital experience is something that we are keenly focused on. It's an obsession for us, because that's really the first touch point for so many of our prospects. So whether it's the creative that we're using, whether it's the imagery that we select for our ILSs and everywhere else where our prospects find us, it's something that we pay very careful attention to. And when it comes to creative, whether it's a corporate campaign or whether it's a property level marketing, we focus very much on finding, using imagery that's very natural, that doesn't feel staged, that doesn't feel like stock images that are, don't really capture that emotion of like, this is something that I really don't want to miss out on. So we are, I would say, obsessive to the point of sometimes driving our agencies and our creative partners a little crazy on how obsessive we are, but it makes a difference, right? So that extra attention really comes across when you're a prospect and you're looking at multiple properties. You can tell the difference, or that's what we aim for. So I would say that that is something that is really important to us, because again, that's the curb appeal. If it's not there, somebody could drive by and they can never be wowed by that in-person experience that we've so carefully curated and obsessed about for many, many years. And we're continuously refining that. So I feel like it's me and my team's responsibility to set things up so that people want to go inside the buildings and they don't want to miss going there. So that's everything from creative, again, the pictures, the functionality of websites. It has to work well, right? Consumers these days spend their time on websites and engaging on apps that are developed by some of the most tech forward companies out there with the greatest engineering capabilities, right? So we don't need to name names today, but you all know, where a lot of time is spent these days online, and we've got to make sure that the functionality of our sites is on point. And so that's why we do constantly a lot of UI and UX research. We're constantly using digital intelligence tools to really understand the experience of our prospects on our websites. So we know what's working, what's not working, where there's points of frustration, where they're dropping off, so we can curate a better experience. And by doing that, the whole hope, again, is that that curb appeal is so appealing that you're going to go to our building, and then that's the handoff to the physical experience.
Amazing. I love the idea of treating this like omni-channel digital experience as your curb appeal. I used to always call our websites our digital leasing offices. What do you want a prospect to experience in the leasing office? Put it in that space. So we do a lot of research before we actually, get in our car and drive somewhere. So you're doing a lot of the sales before the actual, what feels like the sales moment.
And we have a very limited time window to capture their attention, right? You're looking at so many different property websites, properties of different competitors, different parts of the city. If there is one little thing that doesn't work, you're one click away to another tab and now going to a different property. So we obsess over making sure that everything works and that every experience that we offer works seamlessly. So I always tell my team, let's not offer any kind of digital experience that doesn't work flawlessly. I'd rather not offer it, because then you're not missing out anything as a prospect. But when we offer some digital experience and it doesn't work perfectly, then that's when you let down your prospect and they're likely going to go somewhere else.
A little tip for the audience: when was the last time you pretended to be a prospect and pretended to search for an apartment using your tools, looking at your website, trying to schedule a tour, trying to talk to someone? I'd highly recommend doing it often, because technology changes and websites, if you don't keep your eye on them, things can go down. So it's really valuable to do and to put yourself in your prospect's shoes. So if Daniel's in charge of and his team's in charge of all of the curb appeal, let's transition into conversions and how do we retain and create evangelists for our brand?
Yeah. So while Daniel's trying to get everybody in the building, I'm trying to get them to stay. And yeah, so I would say I'm going to echo kind of what Daniel said. We are very passionate about what we do, very passionate about the experience, but I love this term human experience, because it's not only about the customer experience, it's about the employee experience as well. And so we focus a lot of time and effort to really understand what's important to our customers and use that data and those insights to really design the experiences that we're delivering on site. And if we do that well, ultimately, we want to create an experience that's going to be, it's almost painful for them to leave, right? Like, it's so easy. They're so comfortable. They love living with us so much that having to move somewhere else that's not a Bozzuto managed building is going to be really painful. So we'll remove the pain points from our journey and hopefully make them want to avoid leaving. But yeah, so using those consumer insights to really earn their loyalty, differentiate ourselves. And if we're not doing that, I think our business can very easily become kind of commoditized. And so listening to what's important to them, acting on that feedback. But then we know our customer journey is directly correlated with the employee journey, right? So we have happy employees, we're going to have happy residents. And so in everything that we're kind of focusing on, tools and streamlining and making things more efficient for the customer, it also has to be a win for our leasing and on-site teams as well. Solving a friction point or creating a better experience for the customer that's going to create more work on our teams, I would not consider that a win. And so I think that's something that we are very careful about prioritizing. And when we're choosing things to pilot and new initiatives and things that we're going to roll out. And, ultimately, when we do that really well, we get, I know you had a note in here about the flywheel, but, if we can design these amazing experiences, that's when we're going to get these residents advocating on our behalf. And we know we're very focused on our online reputation. And we can build that review volume and build that reputation by designing these experiences that people want to talk about. And we know that, I think this stat's a couple years old, so it's probably more than this, but more than 75% of people are looking at reviews at least twice before deciding where to live. And so that's really important. It's really important to hear what the people who are experiencing it for themselves think.
Marketers get a bad rap that we spend a lot of money, that we're just spending money all the time on our Google ads, on our social ads, on our websites. But when we really focus on the entire journey for our customer, marketing gets a lot more affordable. When your residents want to stay, when your residents are out there advocating for you, and there are tools in the industry that help you create, give your residents a platform to advocate for you, it's really powerful, and you're really playing the long game in that sense. And it is tedious and it's a lot of work up front, but the rewards and the investment that you're making in it just yields such incredible results. So, and I can definitely see that at Bozzuto. We have a very similar tagline at Updater. We call it, "It's so good you won't move without it." Like, make the experience so frictionless, so good that even the thought of doing something else is a nightmare. And yes, I love that. It's a brilliant way to look at it. So this year's a little different, and maybe not, maybe I misheard, but it seems to me like you're going even deeper and you're questioning everything and overturning every rock, looking in every nook and cranny to analyze this renter journey and discover areas for opportunity. When you did this, we'll start with Jenna. Where did you find areas for opportunity and how did you approach that?
So I might approach this a little bit differently. I feel like the past couple of years, there's been a lot of innovation and new things and new technology. So we've been moving really, really fast. And I think a lot of that was stemmed by COVID and having to solve quickly for things that we maybe weren't quite ready to, which was great because we moved really fast and we got a lot of new things up and running. I feel like this year, we're kind of reflecting, refining, and optimizing and looking at creating this really consistent experience across the entire journey. So it's consistently amazing. And no matter what Bozzuto property you live in, you're going to have a consistently great experience. We've learned in some past studies that we've done that our toughest critics are our repeat renters, right? They've lived with one of our buildings before, or multiple buildings before, and they've had this amazing experience. So they're expecting that when they move to another one of our buildings. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this year. And I would say we went really wide over the past couple of years, and now we're going really deep into some specific areas of the journey, if that makes sense.
So what are those specific areas you're going very deep in?
Well, the move-in obviously is a big one. We mapped our kind of typical customer journey several years ago. And not surprisingly, the move-in is just this major point of friction in the customer journey that we've really been focused on for the past couple of years. And several initiatives and things have kind of stemmed from that and trying to solve, because it's this major friction point made up of all these micro friction points that we're trying to solve for. But one that we've worked with you guys on and that we've really honed in on is what happens, somebody signs a lease and then what happens before, like in that time before they move in. And we found that there's a lot of just, it's a lot of moving pieces. They're trying to keep track of so many things. They have this long checklist of things that they need to do. And then on our on-site team side, it's the same kind of thing. Like they're trying to coordinate and help get multiple people ready to move simultaneously. And there's not always transparency between team members or with the resident. So it was just, it wasn't efficient for anybody. And so that's where we've kind of been digging in with you guys on this whole welcome letter thing, which is really simple. And we've just done it this way always, every property has their welcome letter, and they, sometimes it's like a 3 or 4 page PDF that gets emailed out and it says all the things they have to do and all the requirements. And it just wasn't efficient. And so, we've been really excited to work with the Updater team over the past year plus on kind of like shaking that whole process up and reimagining it. And it's been a win, like I said, a win-win for our on-site teams and our customers.
Yeah, there's so much innovation in this industry, and there's so many different moments along the renter journey, and there's so many different amazing companies solving for those different moments. There's just this black hole, like you said, in the move-in process where it was still manual, and it's 2023. That doesn't need to be that way anymore. So it's really cool that I love how you're really considering your on-site teams and their experience, because man, what a busy job. What an intense job to be managing people. It's such a heightened emotional, like it's their home. It has to go right. And like you said, you guys set the expectations high to begin with. So now, it's on you to just compete with yourself at this point, right? Make sure it's
yes. Just continuous optimization, I think, is what we're working on.
So Daniel, when we get back to the curb appeal, obviously people are moving constantly, and you can only retain so much of your resident base. There still has to be so much focus on driving new leads, filling the funnel for the company. What have you noticed? And I know things have changed a lot in the last couple of years. What have you noticed as areas of opportunities to optimize that early stage of discovery for prospects?
So Sydney, you said it so well earlier when you talked about the fact that marketers have this reputation for just wanting to spend money and, rely too much on the, 50% of the money is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. Having grown up in my career and other industries, especially, these very large public companies that are really, really competitive to be able to land an opportunity to be a marketer, the impetus and the onus on the marketer to prove their value as a strategic value driver is completely different, right? Those explanations of "we just don't know" don't really fly, right? You can try that, but you're going to have another colleague that's a little bit more, strategic and can explain things better, and they're going to get the funding for the project or for their initiative over you. So you really, really have to explain things in a way that, at the end of the day, all of the money when it comes to marketing is I always say it's an opportunity cost, right? So if I don't spend it on, or if I spend it on my initiative, I'm taking it from another initiative. So that's the way I like to view marketing dollars. So I have a high barrier in my own mind of what I want to prove the value to be. And so it's really not about constantly advocating for more dollars. It's about advocating for value, driving value to the business. And so from that standpoint, to answer your question, one of the things that I did in my first 6 months at Bozzuto was really, because I was new in the industry, so it's really just observe. I wasn't trying to come in with a specific agenda, or I've got to change this or that. That can really be alienating, and it can kind of ruffle feathers, right? So it's really more about learning. And so what I did was just ingest data, and I'm a very data-driven person. So for me, it's something that I really geek out on and enjoy. And so what I noticed, Sydney, is that in looking at our entire funnel, what I saw is that I didn't feel like we really had a lead acquisition problem. What we had was a nurturing problem, right? Because it was easy to see in the CRM that there were so many leads that were unworked, and they were in the queue and they weren't being worked. Yet the whole conversation is about, we need more leads. Well, of course you need more leads if you're not working all of your leads. So when I investigated that a little bit further, it really just came down to human behavior, and it was a simple thing. When you work at a property, and it's not something that I've done, so I had to talk to people who have and really understand their day-to-day. When you work at a property, you've got a finite amount of time, and you've got a lot of things. You can plan your day, but as we all know, things happen, and next thing you know, you're not doing what you planned on. So what I learned through months of conversation is that the property teams, inevitably, they already are anticipating the fact that their day is not going to go as planned. And so what they do is when they get in the morning and they're looking at their lead queue, is they prioritize the leads that they know have a higher likelihood of converting, right? So in their experience, or through, being a new leasing associate who is being trained by others who've been there longer, you start to hear and learn that there are sources of leads that have a higher likelihood of converting, right? We don't need to name those in this conversation, but it happens, right? So they tend to prioritize those, and they'll say, I'll get to the other ones later. Well, then after, the unexpected residents drop by and walk-in guests, next thing you know, they never got to it. So that is something that I noticed was an issue. Is like, there's two issues there. One is we've paid for those leads in some way or somehow, right? Through our efforts, those leads that haven't been worked, there's been money spent on those. So from that standpoint, it's an untapped opportunity for the business. But more importantly, to me, and this goes back to the whole customer experience thing, is there are real humans behind those leads, right? So you as a customer, as a prospect, you are not well versed enough to know, like, well, I should submit my lead through this channel because they're going to be more likely to call me. That's not something that we should expect of our consumers and isn't fair. So when there's a real human behind those, to me, again, when we're talking about customer experience, it's not just the experience of when you come to tour, or when you're moving in, or when you're a resident, you have maintenance needs. It's the entire value chain. It's from the very beginning. It's those first moments where I've interacted with that company. And I should expect that regardless of how I send my contact information in, somebody should be reaching out to me. And so what I saw was there was an issue there, right? And so how are we going to solve for that when we understand the reality of the property team members? So that's when we really, in looking at the business issues, that's or the challenge behind that is when, we decided to start looking into solutions that'll help us to have that first touch point to those leads immediately, right? And so we did that through AI. And it was something that was a little bit nerve-wracking because we are a high-touch company who's very focused on how we reach out to our prospects, to our residents. So it was nerve-wracking, but in looking at it, at the end of the day, what we were really concerned about were those people behind those leads that were from those channels that don't historically convert. What is their experience like? We've already given them a bad experience. If, again, going back to my example from earlier, it's a curb appeal. This company is supposed to be great, or that property is supposed to be great, but I drove by, it didn't look that good. They didn't call me, they didn't reach out to me. And that doesn't feel good as a prospect. I know we've all had that experience, whether it's with a hotel, with a rental, or whatever it may be. And that's a little bit alienating. And at that point, now that company or that property, whatever it may be, has a much higher barrier in your mind. It's like, now you really have to prove to me why I would want to live there, because you didn't even care about me at that point. And so that's one of the things that we noticed. And what I would say about in regards to that is that's where how we try to evaluate things. It's not like there's this new flashy vendor that's doing X, Y, and Z, and there's a lot of buzz about it. It's really looking at your business and understanding where can I improve the experience for my consumers and also bring better results to my organization. That overlap is what I call the 1 + 1 = 3. That's the place that I want to be, and that's where we strive to be every day.
It's really interesting about our industry compared to other consumer industries. Like, you've come from major makeup companies, and the way that marketers own so much more of the sales process in those bigger consumer brands versus this industry. It's interesting to think about. I mean, I had that same problem when I was marketing for a property management company. I would dump hundreds of leads onto my team, overwhelming amounts of leads. And I'm really seeing this shift where marketing is taking on more of the responsibility of working those leads in things like implementing AI and making sure that when those leads do get passed to the sales team, they're leads that are going to convert and they all feel comfortable, giving them the best experience possible. Because I don't know about you, but I, as a consumer, I don't really need to talk to a person for a while. When I'm ready to talk to a person, I'm pretty much ready to go. I want to self-serve a lot of the journey myself. So having that really strong curb appeal, reducing all the friction in like getting the answers you need, whether it be through AI or just incredible website design. I think that's a really important opportunity that a lot of marketers could miss when we're just focusing on volume.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool to hear about that. Speaking of a bunch of technology in the world, there is so much. It can be really overwhelming. I know that in my career, I've had feedback from on-site teams like, oh, another thing to learn, another thing to onboard. Is this actually going to save me time, or am I overwhelmed by this new thing? Because change is scary. I know from working with your team that you have a very measured approach when it comes to selecting the right technology that not only improves life for your residents, but improves life for your team. Do you have like you got to check all these boxes sort of situation? How do you decide who to go with, who to pilot?
Do you want me to take it, or do you want to start, Daniel?
Go ahead, Jenna, and I'll chime in after that. No problem.
So I would say, I mean, obviously the tool itself matters. I would think from my perspective, it's the people that we're working with and the flexibility of some of these platforms. So we're a largely third-party manager, right? And so anything that we take kind of off the shelf, we always say we need to kind of like Bozzutoize it. And there's nuances and things that we need somebody who's going to be flexible with us and excited about working with us to optimize and evolve and make each other better. We always, when we're selecting platforms and different companies to work with and different tools, we're always referring to them as partners, because that's truly how we look at it. Like, this is a partnership and we need to make each other better, versus, we're your customer and you just do whatever we say, or we just have to use whatever it is right off the shelf. So I think that's been really critical for Bozzuto and selecting different technology partners that we work with, because it just allows us to be better and to grow and learn from each other. And that's been a great part of about working with the Updater team on this, because our teams had a lot of feedback. We really took our time to make sure that the end users were a part of the testing and vetting and piloting process with Updater. So we kind of had that alignment and we could get that enthusiasm and buy-in, and made sure before we said, all right, hey, like, everybody is going to use this, that it had been like fully vetted by actual Bozzuto employees that were going to be using it. And so I think really prioritizing their feedback and having partners that are willing to listen to it has been like game changing for us, and these different, initiatives and rollouts that we've done.
What's so great about that approach too that Bozzuto took is now you have this subset of Bozzuto on-site team members that are going to evangelize this product for you across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot of internal marketing when there's change management happening at a company that affects everyone so broadly. And to have a whole team of cheerleaders on your side that will help everyone else get excited it just makes things go by so much smoother.
It makes such a difference. Like, I can, I've never worked in a leasing office, so I don't know. So me saying this is a great tool and you guys are going to all love it, it just doesn't carry as much weight as, the property manager down the street who's been using it for 6 months is like, trust me, like you're going to love it. I promise. Like, it's not a huge lift. So we found that to be like critical in any kind of new behavior change that we're looking, or new technology that we're looking to implement, is having those kind of like early adopters who are going to advocate to their friends internally about it.
And it feels good to be an early adopter. You feel like you're in on something special, that
Yeah.
you have a seat at the table with people that are very influential at your company. Like, I remember as a leasing agent getting to meet with a corporate marketer and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. Like, I can't believe I get to learn from her and she cares about my opinion. And it's powerful. It really helps with employee retention too.
It's a recognition, I guess, like method for us. It's how we recognize teams that are really engaged and are going to give that great feedback. So yeah, highly recommend doing it that way.
That's one of the secret sauce ingredients of
it is. Yes, for sure. It makes a big difference.
So we talked about how you implemented change successfully. Are there any mistakes or things that you would do differently next time in any change management that you've done over the last couple of years?
If you don't mind, I was going to jump in really quickly on the technology partners and what is the right fit, because this is something that I'm really focused on in my role. So, I mentioned earlier how we have a relentless obsession with customer experience, and I'm looking for partners that have that same obsession, right? As a tech company, you can build products that have the right selling points, right? Or those buzzwords, like we help you to increase your conversion by this much or get more leads. And that sounds great, but I'm always skeptical of things like that, because sometimes products like that are developed just to get the sale. They don't keep in mind the other stakeholders. First of all, and most important, is the customer or the prospect. And then second of all, for us, is our colleagues that are at the properties. That's another really important stakeholder. So from my standpoint, I want to find partners that are obsessed with, let's let the data lead us to the right solution and not be ego driven, right? A lot of times as a tech company, whether you're a startup or you've been around for a while, you're so focused on building the product, and then it's your pet, and you start to have a little bit of an ego about it. I don't want to work with companies that are ego driven. I want to work with companies that are data driven and obsessed with customer experience. So as an example, if you told me, or if I saw in the data that I needed to make all 300 of my property websites purple and neon yellow, and that was going to get us more results, and it was going to be better for the customer and for the property team, probably by tomorrow they would all be like that. So that's the kind of company I want to work with. That's open to understanding where the data is leading, right? That's extremely important, because when you have alignment between the company and their direction for their product development, the consumer, and then the client, which is us, and in turn, for me, and a very important piece of that is our colleagues that are at the properties. That's a sweet spot, and that's where I really want to be. So that for me is something that is extremely important. We've had, for example, technologies, different widgets or things that we've tested that they do provide those selling points, right? Those really cool sound bites. Like, it helped us increase conversion on our website, or it helped us to get more leads. Well, then those leads were really unqualified, and then we were giving much more traffic to our team members, our colleagues that are at the properties. They were having a lot more tours, but they were not getting conversion, right? And so they weren't meeting their goals. So that goes back to what you said earlier about not being a marketer that is just, spending money and not really able to articulate what the value is. I want to be seen, and I want my team to be seen as a team that is focused on driving value for the business, and we're not just focused on our own goals, right? Because if I was focused on my own goals, my team was, we would find all those technologies that are going to help us get conversions. We're not going to care about what the customer experience is, and we're certainly not going to care about what happens with the colleagues at the properties. But that's a short-term view that's going to have a limited runway, and it's going to lose a lot of confidence, not only in those above us, but in our colleagues at the properties, which are essential. So I want to make sure that we're making decisions that aligns all of those stakeholders, because that when we put that as a priority, that cements in everyone the feeling and the understanding that everything that this team does is focused on driving value to all of these stakeholders. And that makes that next ask an easy yes. And I'm always looking for easy yeses. The way to get to hard yeses is by making decisions that are short-term and that are centric only to your goals. When you do that, it becomes a hard pitch. I like the easy pitches. I like the, hey, I know if I'm going to go in and sell this to those above me, they're going to say yes, because we have a long track record of bringing a lot of wins, and they're not going to question because they know that we are tough critics of all of the technology and the vendors that we bring in.
That's such a universal statement. I think it has a lot of, it's helpful for our industry, but universally as a marketer, the old way is, if I drive 1,000 leads to the sales team, to the leasing team, I win. I met my goal. But if one of those 1,000 leads turns into a sale, then you didn't win. Marketers looking at the entire business, and our goals should all be the same. Our goals as a marketer should be the same goals as the sales and leasing team. It removes the friction that's always been there between marketing and sales over the years in every industry. And it really is better for the business. I love that response. I think thank you for jumping in and saying that. I'm sorry, I moved on to like, tell me what you did wrong. Not what you did wrong, but okay. So everybody, let's be relatable. Everybody loves Bozzuto and thinks they're amazing, but has there been any lessons that you've learned over the last couple of years making these changes, getting to where you are today?
Not to toot my own horn, but I feel like this is not my first rodeo. I feel like, and we're by no means like our new implementations and things are not perfect, but we've come a really long way. And I think how we've done that is like spending a lot of time in the alignment phase. It feels like sometimes I'm saying the same things over and over and over and over for like a year until like we get it to a good place, but really taking the time to make sure everybody's aligned, everybody feels good, everybody understands the why behind something. So I think that is big. I think a lesson that I've learned and that I think we're learning as an organization is that we can do anything, but we can't do everything, right? And so this need to prioritize, and what we are going to do and what we do identify as a priority, like the move-in, for example, or like implementing something like Updater, where, we know that the move-in is this like make or break moment in the journey, and there's real repercussions to somebody has a poor move-in experience. It's already like having an impact on their possibility of renewing, and it's hard to recover from that. So, there's a lot of things that we want to do. And I feel like we've really we're trying to be really focused on like what we're picking and choosing as a strategic priority to focus on. And you said it at the beginning, like the teams are so busy. And I always feel a little bit bad when I'm like, okay, like we have a new pilot that we're to roll out, and I'm waiting for them to be like, no more, please. But I think, just spending the time to let them know why it's important, and that like ultimately it's going to benefit them in the long run has been key. So
if you can do anything for change management in general, is to give everyone a why. That's so important. It changes the way you approach everything. It's very valuable. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Daniel?
Yes, Sydney. So what I always tell my team is our job is not to make things work. And from what I mean is like when we're testing new technologies, it's not as far as like the functionality and does the data flow, of course, we have to make that part work, but it's not to make it like, okay, this is something we're going to roll out to the whole portfolio. It's going to be the biggest win. I don't feel like that's our job. Our job is to be objective. Our job is to use a sound methodology where we understand exactly how it impacted the business and have those that narrative really drawn out to the business, where we can say, if we were to roll this out, if we're doing a pilot, if we roll this out to the portfolio, we reasonably expect that it will scale out, the results will be replicable, and that we're confident that this is the highest and best use of our next marketing dollar, right? If you think about things from a standpoint of this is an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means that next dollar, what's the best use for it? right? And so that is our job, is to prove that. It's not to make things work, right? So if we use the technology, sure, the founder in that company, they want it to work no matter what. That's not my job. My job is to use a methodology that we can say to the company and to our clients, we should absolutely use this. This is the highest and best use of that dollar versus plugging it in anywhere else, meaning putting it into an extra advertising or using this or that other technology. And so that is, I like that, because again, that ties into what we've kept talking about through this hour, is about being a strategic value driver to the business. It's about instilling confidence in the company that you are looking out for us, for our clients and our customers, and not just for your own goals, right? I don't want to be that marketer. My team and our entire team doesn't want to be those marketers that are just, throwing things out there and hoping they work and talking about the small wins that happen on a daily basis. We're looking for sustainable, long-term, replicable, scalable wins that are meaningful to the business. And so that's a very different perspective. And from that standpoint, I think that that's our best use, is being that strategic value driver that can really, really articulate to the business how we fit in and that we're just as valuable as any other part of the company.
Wonderful. God, I love that answer. Thank you. Thank you for that. We haven't had any questions from the audience. Not that I've asked, which I regret doing now. Does anyone have any questions or comments from what they've heard or ideas that they'd like to chime in and share? Feel free to put them in the questions or just drop them in the chat. Or if you'd like to ask them live, I will promote you to a panelist. Just let me know. But since we're kind of getting towards the end of this conversation, I would love to put on our fortune teller hats and daydream a little bit about the future and make some wild and crazy predictions, educated predictions. But what do you, I have Daniel, what do you envision to be the future of your part of the renter journey?
Yeah, so, in the past, those of us who've grown up in marketing, we've learned even from undergrad and grad school, whatever it may be, about segmentation and personas. And to me, that's a thing of the past, right? So what I mean by that is that when it was all about segmentation and personas, think about this. You probably, in the audience that's here today, probably uses YouTube or TikTok as an example. If the personalization on those platforms was only based on your age, on your sex, or on your location, you probably wouldn't spend as much time on those platforms, right? But what draws you in and keeps you going back to those platforms, that it's actually based on your behavior, what you've interacted with, what you haven't interacted with. They get to know you over time. And that personalization, that again has nothing to do with your demographics, is what keeps you engaged. And I think that it's time that in multifamily, we move to that era, to an era where we really use first party and leverage first party data and customer behavior. We have in multifamily a very complex tech stacks. We engage with our residents so much on so many different channels and platforms, and we need to be collecting that data and understanding how to improve their experience with us so that we can get to that ultimate. To me, the ultimate is that company gets me.
Yeah.
When that brand or that company gets me, you're willing to, at all costs, stay with there. So what we say is we want to be a brand for which our consumer will accept no substitute. Right. So all of those that are out there on this webinar today, you have those brands, right? You're thinking about those brands right now. As I mentioned this, you will not accept a substitute. You love that, and you're an evangelist. And I think we need to get to that in multifamily. That's the goal. That's what keeps me interested, and what I spend a lot of my time thinking about how we can do within Bozzuto and within this industry.
Oh, That's so different than the old way. The old way was really focusing on individual properties. And I love seeing the industry as a whole really rally around their corporate brand that can be consistent, a consistent experience across wherever you move.
That's so important, Sydney, because again, we're so focused, especially Bozzuto, you know, and so many of you out there are third party, right? So your consumer gets exposed to one brand, they decide they love it, they want to live there. It's for that specific building, but we're one life change away from them no longer being, no matter how much they care about that particular community, we're one life change away, right? One, you know, job opportunity, or I paired up, you know, with a new life partner, or whatever it may be, you're one life event away from them moving away. And so we are very focused on how do we drive value, not only with the brand of the community they live in, but with it Bozzuto as well, right? That's that network effect that is extremely important. So for me, I'm a huge Marriott person. I refuse to stay unless there's like just such a big value add. I will stay at a Marriott at all costs because they get me, they personalize my experience, and they give me an experience that's unlike most people who stay there that are not a loyalist to Marriott. So I want to build that at Bozzuto, and this is something that we are working on, we're talking a lot about, and we're focused on how do we get there.
Amazing. Jenna, before we get into looking into your crystal ball of the future of resident experience, I brought Devin Lesk on. She had a question in the chat that I thought was great, and I think you'd be perfectly positioned to answer it.
Hi.
Hey, Devin.
There, I'm apologize, my work from home day today.
Oh, good.
Yes. So I had a question for you guys about your case study that was just released, and I wanted to hear your feedback about the updates the updater has done with you guys. I was lucky enough to see some of the functionality this week, and we are going to be working on some additional things with updater. And I just wanted to hear how you guys are enjoying the experience of the new features.
Yeah, I have made it a priority, one, to be asking the properties that we have on it already, which is a big group, for feedback pretty consistently. And I think the number one thing is just the time savings has been huge for them. We have one manager who's, I think everybody is probably short-staffed right now, but she's down to leasing assistants, and what would have taken her probably an hour to set, her property's in lease up, an hour to send 8 welcome letters. She sent them in 20 minutes. And so like, that's a big chunk of time for somebody on site who's just running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And then for the customers, you know, it's relatively early, but, you know, I'm hoping to start seeing kind of in survey feedback and reviews and things like that, more quantifiable data. But, you know, what we have seen so far is that we have residents are just like knocking out those move-in tasks really quickly and not forgetting to kind of like go back and finish these things. And what we were trying to avoid in the stories that we've heard and always make me cringe when we kind of embarked on this a year and a half ago was that, you know, it's never fun when a resident shows up and is like, I'm ready to move in. Like, can I have my keys? And you're like, you can't, because I didn't get your renter's insurance, or I don't have so-and-so completed. So that's been a win for our on-site teams too, because that's an awkward like interaction when somebody's ready to move in, you're like, I can't give you the keys. So yeah, they're ready sooner, and there's been less of that happening where somebody shows up not ready. So so far it's been really, really good, and the teams are really happy. So
yeah, that's a big focus for us, is that whole experience. So we just are really excited to start working with the new functions.
yeah, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm excited. The feedback is good too. It looks amazing, and I was very pleased to hear that you guys were the company that you know, helped make that happen. So
Awesome.
we appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
well, good
everybody
luck.
here appreciates that.
Reach out anytime.
Thank you.
When Bozzuto chooses to do something, heads will turn.
I like that.
So, Jenna, daydream with me about what you think the future of customer experience is.
Yeah. I think my answer is a little bit similar to Daniel, but kind of coming at it from the other side of things. I think that we need to really we're going to really know our customers and their emotions at any given point in their journey. And that's kind of what we're working on so that we can tailor those experiences. Again, it all gets back to personalization, but, and that is something we're dipping our toe into right now, but really getting smart about who our customers are and making sure that we're getting feedback from them at the critical points along their journey with us, and that on the back end of things, the right people have access to that information and are empowered to do something about it, right? So I'm all about this kind of listen and act. But and right now we're kind of doing that at like a property level, but really getting down and doing that at a customer level and understanding customer sentiment and emotion at every point in their journey with us. I think it's just going to make us so much smarter. And that's how we're going to get to, like Daniel was saying, this kind of brand that people aren't going to want any other exception for. So.
Amazing. Well, you all asked your questions so late in the game. It's 10:57 for me, and we have so many questions in the chat, and I know we're not going to be able to get to them all. So what we'll do is I'll work with Daniel and Jenna to get those answered, and we will send the whole group the answers to those questions. Thank you both so much for being our very first guests on Multifamily Pros. If you liked it out there in the audience and webinar world, let us know. If you have ideas for topics that you want to hear, if you have ideas for industry pros that you are just like dying to know their secrets, please let us know. And I will keep you all informed on the next guest. And where can they find you, Jenna?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can shoot me an email, jmiller@bozzuto.com.
Thank you. And what about you, Daniel?
I'm on LinkedIn all the time. That's like the only social media I really use, to be honest. So find me on there and we can definitely engage on that.
And keep an eye out for either of these two, because they speak at conferences all the time. So you don't want to miss those. I will send everyone this recording as well as a recap of some of my favorite moments. And thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
This is great. Thank you very much, Sydney.
Of course, I learned a ton. So thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.